Let's start with psychoanalytic criticism. Basically, as the name suggests, that this criticism is confined, or it brings the elements of psychoanalysis into the criticism of literary texts. So the chapter starts with the importance of dreams. And the chapter has advanced very systematically, in a very systematic way, where the writer tells you about uh, how psychologists have interpreted the impact of one's psychology on interpretation. So he starts with dreams, the importance of dreams. This is page 120 through 23, and here the writer tells you about various dreams that led to creation of any sort. Maybe it's poetry, maybe it's a chemical diagram, maybe it's a beginning of a tune. Everything, according to the writer, is conceived through dreams. So, first of all, he gives us the examples of Friedrich August Kekule, who saw that while he was working on developing a molecular structure of benzene, he identified that he was very worried. And in his dream, during that work, when he slept, he found a structure of a benzene which was in the form of a serpentine figure, like a figure of a snake. So when he woke up, he drew that figure, and he realized that this was the chemical structure of benzene. So he obviously, the scientist, he focused on how the dream played an important role in developing this structure. Then he gives us the example of a violinist who belongs to Italy. He is Tartini, and he was, while working on one of his tunes, he was very shocked and caught up in his work. And while he was sleeping, he dreamt that the devil came to him, and he offered him to sell his soul to the devil, so that and he would be getting a sonata in return. So this special tune uh, that Tartini uh, made, that is called the Devil's Trill Sonata. So that is one of his best compositions. Then another example given by the writer is that of Robert Louis Stevenson, who's the writer of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And he says that most of the ideas that came to Stevenson were during his nightmares. It is not only these, people in history who had ideas of great creation during their sleep, but it is the other writers who, during their sleep, was natural sleep, the sleep that we have during the night for rejuvenation, for some, uh, you know, uh, getting energy. But on page 124, he gives us other examples of writers like Poe, De Quincey, and Coleridge, who borrowed most of their contents from their dreams that occurred due to the intake of drugs. These drugs were taken only to cure certain problems, certain diseases. So we can take the example of Coleridge's Kublai Khan. It is a very famous poem, and it is said that this poem was written under the influence of opium. So, by giving us the example of all these uh, uh, masters, the writer brings us to the importance of dreams, or the importance of unconscious. So, on page 124, he says that it is the not only the dreams, but basically the control of the unconscious we, which leads us to creation. And it is the dreams that cause us to question and explore that part of our minds over which we have little control, that is, the unconscious. Proceeding with his description, he gives us the reference of Sigmund Freud, who is considered to be the father of psychology. He wrote a book, The Interpretation of Dreams. Basically, he was a neurologist belonging to Vienna. He's a Viennese neurologist and a psychologist. Bressler quotes the concept of Freud that he gave in his book, The Interpretation of Dreams. He says that in the interaction of the conscious and unconscious, we shape both ourselves and our world. So, our world is not only a combination. Our world is not only the result of whatever we do consciously. Rather, it is the combination of both the conscious and the unconscious which makes our world, which shapes our world. Then he gives us the definition of psychoanalysis. According to Bressler, the psychoanalysis is a method of treating emotional and psychological disorders uh, in a patient analyst setting. That is, where a psychologist has an interaction with his patient, and then certain psychological or emotional problems that the child is going through, or a patient is going through, that problem is resolved. Then he discusses how early childhood and impacts the dream. That is, how most of the children tend to forget the difference between the conscious and the unconscious, or dream and reality. So when then he comes on to the definition of psychoanalytic criticism, and according to him, the psychoanalytic criticism basically is an approach which combines literary interpretation to psychology. And this, Bressler believes that this is not an aesthetic theory. Aesthetic theory would be that theory that defines the literary elements of a certain text, whereas here in psychoanalysis, we question the why and how of things. So, psychoanalytic criticism basically focuses on the on how and why a certain human action occurs, or it takes place. So, moving on, he tells us about the other psychoanalysts, important psychoanalysts. First of all, he refers to Freud as I have already told you in the previous slide. Then he moves on to explain or refer to Carl Jung, who was a student of Freud. So, according to Bristler, he was a rebellious student. And why was he a rebellious student? Because though he started working on the principles that were propounded by Freud, however, Carl Jung did not fully, follow that. The principles of Freud. So he branched out a new theory, which is called the analytical psychology. So, and you can find its definition in page three on page 302. Another important name in the history of psychoanalysis is that of Northrop Frye, who wrote the who wrote a book, Anatomy of Criticism, by four essays. It's by Northrop Frye, which was written in 1957, and he's considered to be the father of symbolic or archetypal criticism. Another important psychoanalysis analyst is Jacques Lacan, and he is famous for his revision and expansion of Freud's theories in the light of newly developed linguistic and literary principles. So he not only worked upon the psychoanalysis or the workings on the brain, but he combined the impact of psychoanalysis in language development and the development of literature. Lacan is also, you have already done Lacan in feminism as well. There are other important psychoanalysts named, and most of them are feminists. The most important of which are Julia Kristeva, Luce Erigere, and Anne Kaplan. Coming to the historical development of a psychoanalysis, we find that this theory uh, is has been divided not into phases like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. uh, Instead, this theory in this book has been developed according to the psychoanalysts or the psychologists. Okay, so the first psychologist we are going to do is Sigmund Freud. His time period starts from 1856 and it continues till 1939, till his death. So he is believed. It is believed that he laid the model of psychoanalytical criticism, and it is. How did he started? Because he was a neurologist. He was working on his patients of hysteria, and while working on those problems of the patients, Freud realized that the problems are not physical. The hysteria that the patients are facing is not physical, rather it is psychological. And then, while continuing his work, he also realized that basically these problems occur. One of the reasons of the occurrence of these problems is the suppressed incestuous desires, uh, which a person always refuses to confront, a person always refuses to accept. So, the term incestuous means having illegal or illicit relations with one of your family members who are your blood relatives. So, Freud, it is not only through the work through his own the workings on his patients that he um, develops his theories. It's not only that, rather, he himself went through a neurotic crisis in 1887, and this because he went through this problem himself, therefore we find that much of his theory is developed uh, after the impact of after the you know after his own neurotic crisis. So uh, he researched on himself and patients like himself. So he posits that fantasies, after combining the findings that he had of his patient's hysteria and his own neurotic problems, he posits that fantasies and wishful thinking, and not only actual experiences, play a large part in the onset of neuroses. Okay, so neurosis is a singular, neuroses is a plural. So he says that neurosis or neuroses is the result of one's wishful thinking, and your desires, your urges, your hidden aspects of your personality. He basically identified four models of human psyche, and these four models were not developed simultaneously. You need to remember that these were developed in a chronological order. First, he developed the dynamic model, then the economic model, then the typographical model, and finally the tripartite or structural model. The first model, that is the dynamic model of human psyche, according to that, the human body human mind is a combination of the conscious, which is the rational, and the unconscious, which is the irrational. Conscious is the is the that part of the mind which governs your reasoning. Okay, which governs your logic, and it also perceives and records your external realities, whereas the unconscious or the irrational part of the human mind, it governs a large part of our actions. How? Because it receives and stores our hidden desires, ambitions, fears, passions, and irrational thoughts. It stores those things which we are afraid to bring to the forefront. So the something that is hidden, that plays a major role in whatever we do consciously. Okay, so this is his dynamic model. And then we find that here we also find a reference to Caris, who was a German physiologist and a painter. Why do we have the reference of Carl Gustav Caris? Because it is not Freud. He developed the principle of unconsciousness, or the unconscious, but it the term unconscious was coined by Caras, and according to Caras, it meant unconscious meant something that is static, that is stopped, that is not moving. So Sigmund Freud took the concept from Caras, and he redefined the term unconscious, and explained that, and he started working on that. He considers that the unconscious is a dynamic system. It is not something that is latent, it something that is lazy. Rather, it is a very practical sort of a thing. How is it a practical thing? He says that it is the unconscious which stores your biographical memories, the memories that one has over time, and also the it also stores the suppressed and unresolved conflicts in one's life. That is, those conflicts that those problems that have not been uh, resolved over time. So unconscious basically, it believes that it you know it has, it stores things that impact what you do consciously. Further continuing with his dynamic model, we find that he believes that the unconscious also stores the eros and the destructive, aggressive instinct. Eros is basically the libido, which is the sexual instinct, the desire to have a physical relation with someone, and the second that the unconscious stores is the destructive or the aggressive instinct. He says that these two instincts of the humanity influence everything that we do. Either if something happens in our lives and we react in a certain way, either we are going to react because of our aggressive instinct or because of our sexual instinct. So he further propounds that if both these instincts work harmoniously, they have the ability to work harmoniously. So that is going to lead to a positive development of character, whereas these also act as enemies. And sometimes the sexual instinct overpowers the aggressive instinct, whereas at other times the aggressive or the destructive instinct overpowers the sexual instinct. He says that these two instincts influence everything that we do. We do something, whenever we do something, it is the result of either uh, either of these two instincts. Then he moves on to the concept of Freudian slips or parapraxis. Okay, so this is mentioned in your course outline as well. He believes that, and this is also a part of the dynamic model. So he says that because your unconscious is a storehouse of, or it stores the disguised truths and desires that want to be revealed in and through the conscious. He says that consciously we are hiding those desires or the truths. However, sometimes these desires or disguised truths come to the forefront because of either our slips of tongue or actions. We sometimes we make mistakes and we make the unconscious, we bring the unconscious into the conscious. So such misspeakings or actions, that is wrong word spoken or actions, they are called parapraxis or Freudian slips. They happen in four forms. Either they occur because of the accidental slips of tongue, or the failure of memory, or we misplace certain objects, or we misread a text, or we mi- uh, interpret a text wrongly. He says that through these, our unconscious wishes and intentions are brought to the conscious. Something which has been hidden for years comes to the forefront because of either of these slips. Slips are slip of tongue. This is it's a maxim that we use so often. The second model of human psyche proposed by Freud is the economic model, and it has similarities with the dynamic model, which was the first model. He says that uh, even in this model, the battle between of control of a person's actions continues, and who is having a battle? The conscious and the unconscious are having a battle. Sometimes the conscious does something, at other times the unconscious does something. However, unconscious desires will force their way to the conscious. It is always he believes that this whenever there is a battle, sorry, there is an error, there's a typo error in point number 2. It is conscious desires will force their way to the conscious. According in this model, he is basically telling us that whatever is hidden in our psyche, in our unconscious, is bound to come forward. How? He says he gives us two principles in this regard, and you need to remember these two principles for the typographical model as well, or as it is going, and the tripartite model as well. Both these models are going to refer to these principles. He says that these human beings go through two sorts of principles, uh, or our actions are governed by two principles. First of all, it is the pleasure principle. The second one is the reality principle. The first principle, pleasure principle, is the result of it craves only pleasure, that is the satisfaction of certain desires, and these desires are basically they require instantaneous, sudden, immediate satisfaction of instinctual drives, ignoring moral and sexual boundaries established by the society. So whatever a person, according to the pleasure principle, whatever happens is you know whatever a person does is driven by two principles, either the pleasure principle or the reality principle. And according to the pleasure principle, the when a person desires for instant satisfaction of things, obviously the boundaries set by the society are uh, they are at once shaken. Then he refers to the role of cathexis. And what are these cathexis? They are an individual's psychic and instinctual energy which maximize pleasure, ensuring immediate relief of all pain and suffering. Cathexis basically is it is that instinct which gives you pleasure and which undermines all suffering, all pain, and you know a person experiences pleasure. Another important principle is that of the reality principle, and this reality principle is basically governed by anticathexis, or the anti charge of energy governed by the reality principle. Here, an individual psyche is held in check by anti-cathexis. A control is put on one's instincts, and the pleasure principle is no more working. This principle recognizes the importance of societal standards and regulations or principle set by the society. Again, as in the previous model, here Freud says that both these principles are at war within the human psyche. Okay, so what is pleasure principle? Pleasure principle is something that gives us instant relief. Reality principle is something that does not give us instant relief. Rather, it tells us to control ourselves because of the society. Then he moves on to the third model, which is then we come to the typographical model of human psyche, which is, according to Freud's, the third model of human psyche. So here he is repeating the same concept that he gave in model one, that is the first model, which is the dynamic model. And here he assigns various jobs to the various parts of the human psyche. According to him, there are three parts of the human psyche. Number one, the conscious. Number two, the pre-conscious. Number three, the unconscious. Here, uh, uh, the conscious is basically the mind's direct link to external reality. It is through the conscious that a person, an individual, interacts uh, with the outer world, and uh, uh, individual also perceives and reacts with the external environment. It is the conscious again which allows, because it is the conscious is interacting with the outer world. Therefore, obviously, when we are behaving in a certain way, we are that is an external behavior. So it is a way of communicating with the outer world. So when in doing so, the conscious allows the mind to order its outside world, that is to structure the outside world, to understand the outside world, to develop preferences for the outside world. The second part of human psyche is called the preconscious, which is the storehouse of memories. Okay, it is the part of the mind which is a bridge between the unconscious and the conscious. So whatever is stored in the conscious is brought first into the preconscious and then into the conscious. So it allows the pre-conscious allows the conscious part of the mind to be brought to consciousness without disguising these memories in some form. It is like connecting the our urges that are stored, our wishes, our dreams that are stored in the unconscious. It is through the pre-conscious that they become evident and come to the conscious. The third part of human psyche is called the unconscious. It holds all the repressed. Repressed is controlled hungers, images, thoughts, and desires of human nature. So, here, this is a brief model. I have provided you a brief model here how the desires come to the forefront, to the conscious. First of all, if you look here, you would find that the repressed impulses that are there in your unconscious, they are in disguised form. They enter the conscious, which is the second part of the human psyche, and after entering the conscious, they these desires are expressed in the form of our dreams or art or other ways. For example, it is if a person, he is in his unconscious, he knows that he has been going through tough situations in life. Obviously, this thing is always going to, this phenomenon is always going to impact his thoughts, his his thought process. And whenever he intends to either he's going to find two ways to express this negativity he has experienced in the conscious world. So what he is going to do, he is going to either express it positively or negatively. If if such impulses, such hungers, such thoughts or desires are expressed in a negative way, obviously it is going to lead to destruction. Whereas whereas if if that person or these hungers images are guided properly in a positive way, art is going to be created, or literature is going to be created. The last model, obviously, Freud had a very long professional career. So the most famous model, the last, which is the last model provided by Freud, is called the tripartite model or the structural model. Here, he is again, because he's continuing with his research on the psyche. He has again divided psyche into three parts, and he has given them different labels. First is the id, then comes the ego, and then comes the superego. Id, according to Freud, is the irrational, instinctual, unknown, and unconscious part of the psyche. That is, the id is the unconscious part. Whatever was called unconscious in the graphical model is called the id in tripartite model. Here, he says that it stores the secret desires, our darkest wishes, and intense fears. So, it is like a storehouse, it is like a repertoire. And basically, it is guided through the pleasure principle. The pleasure principle that needed a sudden or abrupt fulfillment, it is guided by that. It houses the libido, that is the source of all our psychosexual desires and our psychic energy. So it basically operates on impulse, and it desires, because it is operating on pleasure principle, it desires immediate satisfaction or gratification of our uh, 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 desires. Okay, then comes the ego. It is the second part of the human psyche, which is rational, logical, or the waking part of the mind, that part of the mind of which we are conscious. So then he says that it operates with harmony, in harmony with the reality principle, the reality which tells us what is right and what is wrong and how to go about certain things. The job of the ego is to regulate is to adjust the, let's say, adjust something. For example, if you regulate a thermostat, you are adjusting the temperature of a certain thing. So it regulates. Here the job of the ego is to regulate the instinctual desires of the id and to allow these desires to be released in non-destructive ways. So ego is like a balancer, something that is balancing the uh, 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 you know the the extreme desires, and uh, these desires are being controlled through the reality principle by the ego. The third part of human psyche is called the superego. Superego basically is like an internal sensor. Sensor is something that tells you, that operates in in parallel with morality. This censor tells us what is right and what is wrong, and how a person should go about in the society. And it has the ability to handle the it gives the ability to handle the social pressures. Okay, so as the it was guided by the pleasure principle, the ego was guided by the reality principle, super ego is guided by the morality principle, which helps us to live in the society, and it protects us from the negative aspects that could result uh, from the from following our id id id. Okay, it acts as a filtering agent, which tells us what to do, how to control our desires and instincts, and how to uh, you know uh, uh, how not to do those things which are forbidden by the society, and they are pushed back into the unconscious. And here super ego is manifest through the punishment as well. Obviously, when you do something wrong in the society, in public, you are going to be penalized for that, you will suffer for that. However, at the end of conclusion of the role of superego in human psyche, Freud believes that if it is allowed to operate at its own discretion, that is, it is allowed to operate freely, the superego will create an unconscious sense of guilt and fear. You are always going to be struggling for being correct, socially correct. And this is not possible, that a person can be always socially correct. So obviously, when you are always on the lookout for uh, opportunities where you are you have to be correct, you are going to develop a certain sort of a guilt or a fear of the society. And the guilt would be and both these feelings are going to be from the inside. Then he provides us the conclusion by giving us the by telling us the role of ego. He says that ego is something that acts as a mediator, like a bridge, and it controls the sexual desires of the id and demands of social pressure issued by the superego. So it balances both the id and the superego. Whatever it deems unacceptable, something that is not likable for by the ego, it suppresses and deposits in the unconscious. And what it has most frequently repressed in all of us is our sexual desires of earlier childhood. Okay, so ego is something that tells us that this thing is not acceptable by the society, so you need to hide that. Then comes the Freud's pre-Oedipal developmental phase. That is before entering the Oedipus stage or the Electra stage. He believes that human development goes through several phases, and these phases are not only measured physically, rather he has made this division according to the psychological growth. He says that these three phases are basically they overlap in early childhood, and he calls this the oral stage. The first stage is the oral stage, which is further divided into two stages: the anal stage and the phallic stage. The oral stage is basically uh, uh, the very first stage of a baby's life, where he is being taken care by the mother, obviously, and because he is taking everything from his mother. Uh, 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 so uh, the that act of nourishment, that is breastfeeding, it activates his or her libido. It gives them a sort of sexual pleasure. And here the mouth have a very important role to play, because this mouth later the pleasure of the mouth later transforms into the pleasure of sucking the thumb, and later on kissing. It is this is the Freudian concept. Okay, then comes the anal stage, which is the second stage. Here the object of pleasure is the anus, which is used for defecation. So here, this is the time when these children start to realize that they are independent people, they are separate from their mothers, and by you know uh, the children at this stage consider defecation as a means of expressing both their anger and their excitement in discovering their independence from their mothers. And by controlling their feces, children also learn that they can control others. Uh, See, if they are controlling their own feces, they are basically troubling themselves. So in a way, they are getting sadistic pleasure by controlling their feces, their excrement. The final stage is the folic stage, which is here the desire is turned towards the genitals, where the child learns the pleasure that results from stimulating one's organs. So, Freud asserts that here the principle that operates is that of the of the pleasure principle. And because the child is at this stage self centered, sadistic, and assertive, he cares about nobody else but his own pleasure. Here, this is the time when the child becomes aware of the maleness, or of his maleness or her femaleness. And if all these stages are handled properly, uh, the children are going to be able to handle the Oedipus or the Electra complexes properly as well. The next important concept in Freud is the complexes, and these principles are the most studied concepts in literature, both in psychoanalytical criticism and literary criticism. The three complexes that Freud suggests are the Oedipus complex, the castration complex, and Electra complex. Oedipus complex, you have already done Oedipus Rex in fourth semester of your BS, when I think your course title was Classical and Renaissance Drama. So, remembering the story of Oedipus, it was predicted that he is going to kill his father and he's going to marry his mother. However, Oedipus tries to go against this. He tries to defy the prophecy. However, these both these events occur, which lead to the downfall of Oedipus. Basing on that, Freud believes that it is Oedipus story is basically the universal human experience, because at the formative stage in one's life, or one's psychosexual development, the child transfers his love object from the breast, that is the of the mother, to the mother. So he, in one of his books, Introductory Lectures on Psychoanalysis, this is the 21st lecture which he gave during 1915 to 1917. He says that this is the during the late infantile stage, that is when he around the time period of when the child crosses, let's say, 6 or 7 months. It is somewhere between 3 and 6. All infant males possess an erotic attachment, a sexual attachment to their mothers. Unconsciously, he also desires to be having a sort of sexual union with his mother, and in his father he finds a rival. In his father he finds a rival for his mother's affection. So you must have seen videos where the children are absolutely, they are reacting against the father when he comes near his mother. So in the folic stage, a child becomes uh, 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 aware of his own organs, and perceives the father's attention to the mother as sexual. He realizes that it is the father is giving a different sort of attention to the mother. It's not the attention that all our siblings are getting. Then comes the castration complex. The castration complex basically is that it occurs when the little boys, they realize that they have organs which are different from that of their mothers and sisters, and therefore they you know in a way they are uh, you know they become more confident of that. Because of that confidence, the male child, he um, stops having those feelings, those desires for his mother. And because he believes that in case the child has certain those sexual feelings towards the mother, he is going to be castrated by the father. He is going to be, become he is going to become impotent, or he is going to be declared impotent by the father. So starts controlling his sexual desire, and identifies himself with the father, and hopes to get a wife someday, or a woman someday, as his father had possessed at that time. So unconsciously, this is his transition from boyhood to manhood. Then comes the Electra complex. It is faced, not usually, it is faced by young girls, and every girl has to go through that in order to become a normal woman. She is at her early stages of life, she is also attracted towards the mother, like the son, like her brother. However, she at this stage she is also considering the father as her rival, as her opponent, as her enemy. So with the passage of time, she starts to realize that she does not have those organs that are possessed by the father. So And she also realizes that her mother does not have that either. So because of that, she becomes more, at the later stages of her life, she becomes closer to the mother. And she starts identifying herself with her. So here, when she starts to identify herself with the mother, so here her transition is complete. She becomes a complete woman. And she also desires to possess a man one day, like her uh, uh, mother. So it is at this stage that that penis envy is mitigated, it is controlled, and there is a sense of lack which is somehow controlled as well.